Hi everybody, my name is Ritika and we are back with Block-1, Unit-2 of counseling process. Now what is counseling process? Counseling is a process wherein the client with the help of a counselor sets specific goals. Now the goal could be anything, whatever the client is dealing with. Now in counseling process, more the goals are clearer, it will be easy to stay focused and get the goal achieved by the client. So this book also says that humans are generally goal oriented, so defining specific goals increases the likelihood of success. Now when we are saying likelihood of success means if a counselor and client sitting for a session, if the counselor can guide or assist the client to create something more focused, or something which is actually useful for the client, then there are more chances of doing that thing by the client and be successful in changing the behavior. Now during the session, clients share their experiences and problem, and they also focus on the fears and goals, and the fears could be like abandonment, rejection, inadequacy, it could be anything. So the client is talking about so many things. It's the role of the counselor to see what is important and assist the client to be more focused so that he or she can achieve success, or to work on it in order to have some change in behavior. Now the counselor helps clients to identify their fears and then also suggest alternatives without making any decision for them. When we talk about decision in the counseling process, it's a very non-judgmental process wherein we don't tell, as a counselor, we don't tell the client that you should do this or you can do this or that. No, what we do is we just ask good question which allow the client to think of alternative, and when they think of alternative, it's easy for them to make decision because the alternative comes from their mind, not from ours. It also helps in decision making. It could, so it's in general, it's useful for the client to figure it out. When the client figure it out, they feel more empowered. Now counseling also aims to improve decision making, personal skills, confidence, and career direction. We already know there are different kind of counseling. There's a career counseling, there's a personality counseling, there's a relationship counseling, and so forth. So uh, so using the same process, you can become master in one of the counseling process. Now what happens during counseling? It enhances communication, it enhances relationship, and it also helps the client or support the client to cope with depression or anxiety. All right, it's more like a recovery process from the past. Now counseling process involves clarifying feelings and needs. So we ask our client that how do you feel, what would you need. If when the client is talking so much, we need to make sure that we set realistic goals, or we support them to create realistic goals, and then explore options wherein how will they achieve those goals, right? Once the client figured it out how will they achieve, then they need to be encouraged to make sure they implement those new skills or behaviors within and outside the session. And it's again very important, if the client is not committed to what he or she figured it out about his or her goal, then the counseling is not effective. It has to be it has to be strong enough wherein the client actually get committed to attend all the sessions required. Normally it requires 8 to 10 sessions to solve any challenges the client have, um, by engaging in different ways of thinking and acting. Now counseling is a very structured process. It has a beginning, where I called it more of exploration. Then there is a middle wherein we go deeper, and then the third part is the end wherein we figured it out what is the action, like what are the alternatives the client has figured it out, and how will he or she achieve it. Now, the counselor is a facilitator, okay? We are not the advisor. The counselor is a facilitator who facilitates clients' exploration, wherein he or she find difficulties to make a decision, or they are distressed, or they are depressed, they don't know how to make good decisions. So, there a counselor plays a very important role. Now, there are different counseling model exists. So, this one type of counseling model is transactional analysis. So, in this model, it's more about understanding personality, understanding relationship, or communication through the concept of parent, adult, and child. So, overall, counseling helps clients to gain control over their lives by identifying negative pattern, feelings, and behavior. All right, so what as a counselor we need to do? We need to bring them from this negative pattern, feelings, and behavior to positive pattern, feelings, and behavior. You know, when these positive changes clients started to see, they feel good about it, and then they start taking responsibility of their outcome. Now let's talk about the steps in counseling process. Very first step is that skills and experience should be recognized, right? So what counselor does, counselor actually help clients to acknowledge their own skills and experiences. Then second one is confrontation with the self. Now what counselor does in here, from a very caring standpoint, clients are gently challenged. So they are asked some questions um, on how they might undervalue themselves and others, right? When this happened, it's more about confrontation with the self. The third one is re-experiencing the past. Now, client revisit the relevant past events in the present, which can lead to emotional release. When the emotional release happens, um, they started seeing things more clearly. They are also able to see what are their current needs and what are they lingering on for all this while. The fourth is emphasis on feelings and thoughts. Very important as a counselor, we need to focus more on the emotions and thoughts, even the body language of the client, than just what he or she talking. So these emotions and feelings are important to to see in the client, that could become a catalyst for action and change. Now the fifth one is support, challenge, and practice. Now in this, uh, so as a counselor, it's important that we help our clients to progress uh, through support. That okay, we are here to help you. Then challenge a little, and then support them that they should implement that behavior on a regular basis. Now, counseling may have finite number of sessions. Um, it depends on how client think, feel, and behave. If they need 4 sessions, they are good enough. Some clients need even 8, some need 12. So it's based on the kind of difficulties and fears or trauma a client is going through. So you can decide based on that. Now, what are the stages of counseling process? Now, effective counseling involves 4 main stages. First is identify the need for counseling. So, as a counselor, you need to recognize whether the counseling is needed or not for the client. Second one, prepare for counseling. So, when you know that counseling is needed, then you plan and set up a counseling session, and the session needs to be confidential. Now, the third one is conduct the counseling. So, once you have decided to do the session, you have planned it, set up it, then you have to use the structured method to do the session. Then comes follow up. Once the session is done, it's important to follow up to ensure whether the client is progressing or not for whatever action he or she has decided in the session. Now, counseling focuses on enhancing client's psychological well being. How? By enabling them to reach their full potential. Now, when they are reaching full potential, what is happening? Their personal growth is happening, their development is happening, they are more self understanding, like that They start to learn about themselves. So this process empowers a client to adopt more constructive life practices. And when they adopt more constructive life practices, they tends to be more into positive feelings and emotions. Okay. Now counseling can help clients to understand their concern better and develop new skill to manage their personal and educational issue. It could be any, even professional issues. So what counselor does, a counselor offers a fresh perspective. So how is that happen? The counselor asks questions which allow the client to think differently and find different solution. Now when it's different solution, it could be creative solutions too, which the client hasn't thought of. Sharing thoughts and feeling with an impartial counselor can be particularly beneficial. So when we say impartial counselor, that means a counselor which is open, understanding, non-judgmental, and a good listener who is not adding any of his or her experience of life in the session. So the counselor need to be just blank page or blank slate when he or she sits with the client. Now all client information shared with the counselor is always confidential. Always remember this. Counselor engage in case consultation, supervision, to ensure the best practices. They discuss client concern while removing and identifying information when possible. So as a counselor, I know the information is confidential, but as a counselor, you can always discuss some of the cases which you feel it need to be discussed with the counseling community, but you should not use their name or information while you're referring to the challenge you are facing. Alright, I hope you are able to understand what I'm saying all this while. Now, the next point is counseling process followed by the counselors. Now, what all things as a counselor we need to take care of? First, it's based on the type of counselor, client, and the issue. But most of the process of counseling has these 7 important steps. One is background information collection. Is important for a counselor to gather clients' personal and relevant information. Second one, identification of core issues. Here the counselor needs to pinpoint the main problems or concern a client can have. Third one is case formulation, wherein a counselor develop an understanding and plan based on the issues he or she identify. Then comes goal setting for the therapeutic process. Here the counselor is defining specific goals for the counseling. So let's say if there are 7-8 sessions, the counselor knows that we will talk about this, then this, then this, then this. Likewise, the whole sessions are planned. Now implementation of interventions. Here the counselor apply therapeutic techniques and strategies. Then comes evaluation of the intervention. Here the counselor assess the effectiveness of the counseling interventions. If it needs to be changed, they change it. Otherwise, they continue it. If there is a requirement to refer the client to somebody else, they do that too. Then comes closure. Closure is the counselor finally conclude the counseling process that okay, you are good enough, your issues has been identified and resolved. Then it also talks about what should be the what comes into initial interview process. The first one is personal data sheet. A client has to complete this data sheet before he or she indulge in counseling process. Then there should be discussion of concern between counselor and client. So counselor actually talk through the client's issues and explore alternative services if required. If the client wants to go for alternative services, is fine. If not, then again there is another conversation need to be made with the counselor. Then the deciding steps comes into picture. This include um, whether further counseling is required or not, whatever the concern client has been clarified or not, whether the plan is set or not. Then if not, then there is a requirement to schedule further appointments for ongoing exploration. So there's already sessions going on, and they keep scheduling sessions until they figure it out, the goal and the options. Then referring to the alternative services for specific need. If the client is not getting any solution uh, by you as a counselor, then it's always advisable to refer that client to somebody else, so that the client get the right treatment. Now the theoretical approaches, there are two. One is varied emphasis, which includes the counselor focus differently on behavior, thinking, and emotions. So based on these, there are theories which can be taken. Then comes central goal. Central goal, what is the central goal? Central goal is to improve the client's well-being. Simple. When we talk about treatment length variables, so it should be what is the severity of the problem, what is the client motivation, what are the types of problem, what is the age of the client, then the focus and the scope of the client. If more focused problems is resulted more shorter treatment, with deeper emotional issues take longer. So if it's just a problem, then it's easy to solve it, but if it's an emotional issue, then it takes time. It takes the whole process of healing, grieving. It could be various processes. Then comes feedback and concern. In this, there could be either client is satisfied or client is dissatisfied. If client is satisfied, well and good, you can say happy goodbye to the client. But if the client is not happy, then client can happily discuss any issue they have with some senior counselor. Okay, so now let's talk about the procedure of counseling process. Now, what is the procedure? We can also call it like ethics, right? Yeah, kind of. So the first one is to establish a safe and trusting environment. If as a counselor we are not able to create a safe or trusting environment, then the client will never open up, and then he will never be able to, um, you know, share what the actual problem he or she has. So the first thing is we need to create a secure space where clients feels more comfortable and share and trust us with the information he or she is providing. Second one is help the person put their concern into words. Sometimes in the process it's very difficult for a client to actually articulate their concerns, right? So it's important for a counselor to gauge that and support that client to share his or her concern. Third point is active listening. Now it's again very important that we need to understand what is the client's agenda through different techniques, like we need to listen well and then paraphrase it to ensure that we are understanding it right. Then we can summarize, we can reflect, and we can interpret, and the focus should be more on feelings rather than whatever the client is talking. Now fourth one is transform problem statement into goal statement. Here, now the client is talking so much about his problem or the whole world, but you have to bring that client from the area of problems into a area or space wherein the client can see clear goals to work on. Then comes explore possible approaches to goals. Now there are various ways to achieve the goals. So by asking the right questions or exploratory question, as a counselor we can support our clients to figure it out different approaches to the goal. The next one is help the person choose one way towards the goal. Now we need to guide the client in selecting a specific approach. So the client is talking about 200 things, for example, 3 things. So we need to make sure that he figure it out one way so that it's easy for him to agree and plan that specific approach. Now the next step is make a contract to fulfill the plan. And now when we are talking about contract, it means as a counselor we are asking how is the client gonna achieve this goal? What could be the next step? So the client will explore all the next steps and figure it out, and then as a counselor we will ask him or her to summarize what all things happened to him or her. And also as a counselor we need to clarify and verify the session's outcome, that what is that a client want to achieve in the session. Once the session is done, it's important to take feedback from the client and confirmation of understanding. Now this is all about the procedure. What is the role of counselor? There are two important roles of counselor. One is that the counselor should listen without adding any values or beliefs of himself or herself on the client, and support the client in explore his or her thoughts and feelings. Second one is the counselor should question in a way which supports a client to reflect their feelings and thought process, and the important changes in behavior to improve his or her life or relationship. So these are the two things, non-intrusive listening and reflective techniques a counselor should adopt. Now when we talk about the counseling process, which is guided by theory, so when we talk about guided by theories, there are several stages of relationship development: problem identification, goal setting, interventions, and follow up. So we need to follow these based on the theory, but counseling also have dynamic nature. That means when we are indulged into a counseling process, it evolves naturally by helping the client to become to develop better relationship, um, not just by himself but also with the counselor. And as a counselor we need to facilitate rapport building, like we, so that the trust can happen. We need to do some assessment. We also need to support our client with the goal setting and the planning of desired outcomes. All right, now there are major stages in counseling process. One is developing a relationship, which includes trust and rapport. Then working in a relationship, that means actively engaging in the counseling process to address issues and whatever challenges a client have and support them to work towards their goal, so that they come out of those challenges and see more positives to work on. Then comes terminating a relationship, which means now there is no need of counseling. The client is healed, or whatever he or she wanted to achieve, they got it. So the counseling relationship can be ended once the goal is achieved. Now each stage has its unique challenges. Counselor must navigate these to ensure effective counseling. So although it says that these are the process, but sometimes we need to uh, work around based on the kind of client we have. All right, I hope you got it. Now comes the stages of relationship or developing a relationship. So let's take an example. Let's say there is a 16-year-old client named Lucy, who comes to a counselor, right, Miss Ritika, for help with anxiety and academic stress. Now, what could be the early stages of relationship? First is the initial meeting. What should be the structure of initial meeting? Uh, an initiative should be that Miss Ritika explain the counseling process to Lucy, what is being expected, and the confidentiality agreement. Then Lucy is encouraged to share her thoughts and feelings, knowing that she can control the pace and depth of the discussion. Then second point is building trust and rapport. How will we do it? We'll do it through predictability and consistency. Now here Miss Ritika will schedule weekly session to ensure that Lucy is punctual and present for each of them. When she had to schedule once, she explained the reason to Lucy and promptly arrange a new time if there is any reschedule required. Okay, it should not be like the Lucy says, okay, I'm not available next week. So the quickly Miss Ritika will say, okay, then what about the other week? So it's important as a counselor, we need to quickly get an appointment or get a schedule done for the session. Then comes testing. Now, what happens if Lucy skip a session without telling Miss Ritika? So instead of reprimanding her, she should gently ask her in the next session if everything is okay. Instead of we get mad as a counselor that this person never comes in, instead we should say that okay, what happened? Are you okay? And then reassure them that it's safe to discuss. Sorry, reassure her that it is safe to discuss any ideas or fear she might have. Then comes the confidentiality part. Here, Ms. Ritika reiterates that everything we discussed in the session will always be confidential unless there is any harm for Lucy or harm from Lucy to others, ensuring Lucy feels secure in sharing sensitive information. Then third point is creating core condition. Now what is core condition? First one is empathic understanding or empathic listening we talked about. Here Miss Ritika will listen actively, acknowledge Lucy's feeling about her academic pressure and respond with empathy. It's like it sounds like the amount of schoolwork you have is overwhelming and it's really weighing on you. Okay, so then next is unconditional positive regard. So here Lucy is already in a negative space, so it's always good to bring her to the positive space by consistently reassuring Lucy that she is worth and she cannot be defined by her grades. So as a counselor we can say that you are valuable and important regardless of your academic performance to boost the positive morale. Then come congruence. Here, Miss Ritika remains genuine, sharing her own high school experiences when appropriate to create a connection. Um, for example, as a counselor, I can say, I remember the feeling same way when I was in your age. It was really tough. And the moment we say that, the clients start thinking that, okay, this is not just me who's facing this. She also had this feeling when she was at my age. Right? Then comes respect. In respect, she respect Lucy's perspective. Now who's she? A counselor respect Lucy's perspective and decision by saying that I respect your choice to focus on what you feel is manageable right now. Then come confrontation. So when Lucy avoids discussing a specific issue, then Miss Ritika gently confronts her, say by saying, "I notice you seem to be hesitant to talk about your relationship with your parents. What's going on there?" All right. Then come immediacy. So guys, when I'm talking about these questions, these are the questions which comes from the counselor, and we need to learn how to say this question in a nicer way based on the conversation we are having with our client. Okay. Then comes immediacy. Immediacy means accessing or addressing current feelings by saying, let's say, right now you seem particularly anxious. Is there something that happened recently that triggered this? So that will make a client think. Then come concreteness. Here we talk about practical steps. So be more focused. And as a counselor, you can say, after talking all this while, let's create a study schedule that breaks down your work into smaller and more manageable tasks. Right? What is that look like? So client will say XYZ things anyway. So that comes under concreteness. Then comes self-disclosure. In self-disclosure, based on the personal experience Lucy has shared or experienced, to build trust, uh, she might say that based on the conversation I had with you, Miss Ritika, when I feel overwhelmed, I always found that taking short breaks help me to regain focus. So maybe I would like to do something like that. So that's a good start, right? Then let's take the client into goal setting part. Now, what happens in the goal setting? There are counseling goals. What could be the counseling goals? This could be like Miss Ritika and Lucy will set a goal for their session to reduce her anxiety and develop better study habits. And then there could be personal goals as well, wherein Miss Ritika will help Lucy to test to set a personal goal by trying out a new hobby to help to manage stress, like joining a school art club or singing club or something which keeps Lucy feel lighter, not overwhelmed. So, through these, Ms. Ritika will establish a strong supporting relationship with Lucy, creating the foundation for effective counseling and positive change. So, this is an example about the whole process of developing a counseling relationship. Now, if you see in the book, so it talks about building relationship in counseling. What is that? What we call that? That means both client and the counselor should understand the counseling better, and the counselor creates a comfortable atmosphere for sharing for the client. Then it's important that the counselor makes a connect with the client so that the client feel comfortable. Third one is the early stages of relationship has one opportunity to understand the client and their issues. Second, uh, we need to use listening skill and pay attention to non-verbal communication. Third one is we need to avoid being judgmental or jumping into conclusion where when we are in the counseling process. What could be the task of the counselor? One is building trust, very important. Then developing rapport and trust, which includes predictability, consistency, testing, confidentiality, and goal setting. And third one is core condition for successful counseling. Now let's see uh, working in a relationship. ये हमारा 2.2.7. Okay, let's start with an example. Now let's say there is an Emily which is 25 years old client and she is seeking counseling for a chronic anxiety and relationship issues. Now what could be the goals? After establishing trust, Emily and her counselor, Dr. Smith, should set goals to reduce anxiety and improve her relationship skills. Now, what could be the perception? In perception, Emily feels hopeless about her relationship with her partner while she is in the process of counseling, but Dr. Smith helps her reframe whatever she says by exploring the positive aspect and potential growth opportunities. Now, as I discussed earlier as well, when a client is talking, they talk mostly negative stuff. They talk like this is not going right, this is the problem, this is the challenge. So as a counselor, we need to bring that positive aspect so that the client can see some growth opportunities. Now comes leading. In counseling, a counselor can guide also. So here Dr. Smith gently guides Emily to consider attending a couples workshop to improve their communication with the partner. What else is happening here? There is an accurate empathy. Now there are two things. One is primary empathy, second one is advanced empathy. In primary empathy, Dr. Smith respond like, it sounds like you feel overwhelmed by your partner's expectations. That will make the client think. And then advanced empathy would be wherein Dr. Smith is exploring some deeper issues and say that, hey, I sense there might be an underlying fear of not being good enough. Can we explore that together? So, this is more of an advanced empathy. Now comes self disclosure. In self disclosure, Dr. Smith shares that I have also found it challenging to navigate relationship dynamics, and what helped me was learning effective communication strategies. So, here Dr. Smith is also sharing his experience in order to connect with the client. Then come positive regard. In positive regard, Dr. Smith consistently values Emily's feelings and experiences by saying your concerns are valid and important, giving a feel of acceptance. And then come responding styles. In this, there are balanced response. Here, the counselor, Dr. Smith, addresses Emily's feeling, behaviors, and thoughts by saying, you feel anxious because you think your partner will leave if you don't meet their expectation, which leads you to act overly accommodating. It's giving a maybe macro view of what Emily has shared all this while. Now comes immediacy, which is also relationship immediacy. Here, Dr. Smith addresses a moment of tension in the session and says that I noticed you seemed hesitant when I mentioned the workshop. Can we talk about it? And then Emily might explore more on this. And then comes here and now immediacy, wherein during the session, Dr. Smith says, um, right now you seem particularly distressed. What's on your mind? Then comes humor. In humor, um Dr. Smith uses some light humor to ease the tension. For example, he says, I bet your partner would be surprised if you suddenly started speaking in Shakespeare's English to communicate. Then comes confrontation. That means this is an invitation to reflect by a counselor. So here, Dr. Smith gently confronts by saying, hey, you have mentioned feeling unappreciated, yet you avoid expressing your needs. Can we explore how this might be affecting your relationship? And then come transference and counter transference. In transference, Emily's project passed feelings of abandonment to Dr. Smith, fearing that he will give up on her. So, who is he? The husband or the partner will give up on her. And counter transference, Dr. Smith feels a strong desire to reassure Emily constantly, which he discusses with the supervisor to maintain professional boundaries. Now, here in this interaction, Dr. Smith and Emily work together effectively, fostering personal growth and achieving counseling goals. Again, when we do counseling, it's not possible to end that process in one session itself. There might be multiple sessions in order to support Emily in the process. Now, when we see from the literature perspective, it says that the success of counseling depends on the strong working alliance between the counselor and the client. So this relationship evolves into working to, it's more towards working on shared goals and trust. Once trust established, facilitated by mutual interaction and various counseling techniques, then the counseling begins. Now there are key components like changing perception, leading, accurate empathy, self disclosure, positive regard, responding style, immediacy, humor, confrontation, transference, and counter transference, which we understood based on the example I just gave you a while ago. Alright, now let's understand how to terminate a counseling relationship. Let's take an example that there is this 30-year-old client named Lisa. She has been seeing this counselor, Mr. Adams, for anxiety and self-esteem issues. Over several months, they have worked together and now Lisa has made significant progress. Now, what will happen when it comes to termination? Let's talk about timing of termination. There are two things. One is assessment, second one is discussion. In assessment, Mr. Adams and Lisa will review the goals and the progress. Uh, Lisa has demonstrated improved self-esteem and reduced anxiety. So they are checking overall progress, right? And what was the challenge with Lisa? It was about anxiety and self-esteem. Now, when we talk about discussion, in discussion, they will agree that Lisa has developed the skill to manage her anxiety independently and has achieved her behavioral, cognitive, and affective goals. So, there is not much need of adding more session to her. Now, when it comes to handling termination, there are two things. One is formal session, second one is review. In formal session, Mr. Adams, who is a counselor, will schedule a final session to discuss the termination. He will also highlight Lisa's achievement and emphasizes her ability to face future challenges independently. Right? And in review, they will review the progress made all this while, and Mr. Adams will provide Lisa with strategies to maintain her gains. Then come addressing resistance. Now there are two things in this. There could One is feeling, second one is processing. So in feelings, is Lisa expressed some sadness about ending the session, but Mr. Adams acknowledged her feeling and reassured that it's natural to feel this way, but he is always there if she would like to schedule another session. In processing, they discuss ways Lisa can continue to support herself, including reaching out if she feels the need in the future. Same ways like acknowledging the feeling. Then come referrals and follow up. There is no immediate need for Lisa to require a referral, but Mr. Adams provide information about other resources in case she needs them later. Okay, then comes follow up. In follow up, they both agree to do a follow up call in a month to check on Lisa's progress, ensuring it doesn't undermine her responsibility of her own growth. So, through this structured and sensitive approach, Mr. Adams helped Lisa to transition smoothly from counseling, reinforcing her progress and independence. So now Lisa don't need counseling session anymore. She can take care of herself on her own. If we see it from the bookish point of view, so some of the key concepts book talks about. One is transference. What is the definition of transference? Here the client project past or present feelings, attitudes or desire to the counselor. This can cause the client to react to the counselor similarly to how they react to significant people in their lives. For example, a client who had a critical parent may view the counselor as judgmental even if the counselor is supportive. Then comes countertransference. In countertransference, the definition would be the counselor's emotional reaction or behavior towards the client, influenced by the counselor's own past experiences or feelings. For example, a counselor who previously experienced abandonment might feel an overwhelming desire to always reassure a client, potentially blurring professional boundaries. And what could be the action? If counter transference occurs, the counselor should seek supervision on personal counseling to address these feelings. Then comes terminating a counseling relationship. What is the importance? Termination is important for the well being of both client and counselor, ensuring a professional end to the relationship once the goals are met in the sessions. What is the function? The function indicates counseling is finished. Changes have generalized into the client's normal behavior and client now act more independently. Timing of the termination would be, it depends on the concentration, whether the clients have met their goals, can the clients show progress, is the counseling relationship still helpful, has the initial context changed, or the resistance to termination could be from the clients may resist due to feeling of loss or insecurity, or counselor may resist should address these feelings in supervision. Then there is also premature termination wherein clients might stop attending session before the goals are achieved. Counselor should try to schedule a closer session and possibly make referrals. When it comes to counselor might end counseling early for various reasons. Um, a summary session or appropriate referrals can be suggested as necessary. Now, when it comes to premature termination, it is also very important for a counselor and the client to understand each other if things are not going good. If the client is not happy or the counselor is not happy, it's better to refer them to the right people, so that the process can be done. Process means counseling can be done. Then come referrals. In referrals, reason could be specific behavior or action that requires referrals or different people. Like we always say, na, if we go to a doctor, when then doctor refer us to somebody else who is more specialist or will be more helpful in our case. So it's something like that. In process, it provides name of several other counselors but maintain confidentiality. Then comes follow up. In follow up, the purpose can be for the evaluation, research, or the client check in, but most not undermining the client's responsibility for change. So, when we are talking about counseling, in counseling, it's all about change, some change in the client's behavior, which will help him or her for their personal growth. All right. So, here we are done with our chapter 2 and block 1. Thank you so much for your patience and your listening. Oh, it's not over yet. I forgot there are more factors influencing counseling process. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about the most important part, the factors influencing the counseling process. First is structure. Now, what is structure? Structure in counseling refers to the clear understanding between the counselor and the client regarding the nature, condition, procedure, and parameters of the counseling process. Now, what is the importance of structure? One, it provides clarity and direction to the counselor client relationship. Second, it protects the rights and roles of both parties. Third, it ensures successful counseling outcomes. Now, what could be the component of this structure? One is time limits for the session. Second, action limits to prevent destructive behavior. Third, role and procedural limits. Now, if we use as an example, a counselor explains the structure at the start of the counseling, specifying that session will last 1 hour and will occur weekly and outline the confidentiality policy. This helps the client to understand the boundaries and expectation, making them feel secure and focused. Then after structure comes the initiative. Now, what is the definition of initiative? It refers to the client's motivation to engage in the counseling process. The challenges could be many clients may be reluctant or resistant. Then there could be reluctant clients often come involuntarily or may prematurely terminate counseling. There could be resistant clients may seek counseling but avoid the discomfort associated with the change. So, what could be the counselor strategy in this case? One, anticipate and accept client's defensiveness, show patience, understanding, and non judgmental attitude. Third, use persuasion and gentle confrontation when needed. For example, a counselor works with a court ordered client who is initially unmotivated. By showing empathy and building trust, the counselor helps the client to open up and engage more actively in the process. Alright, then comes setting. Now, the definition of setting could be the physical environment where counseling takes place. What is the importance of setting? One, a comfortable, private, and quiet setting which promotes effective counseling. Second, the room should have soft lighting, quiet colors, and comfortable furniture. Then the content also talk about solar technique. Now, solar is SOLER. S for face the clients quietly to show involvement. O for adopt an open posture. L for lean towards the client to show interest. E, maintain eye contact. R, relax to make client feel at ease. Now, for example, a counselor arranges their office with a comfortable chair, soft lighting, and minimal distraction. They sit facing the client, maintaining eye contact and leaning slightly forward to demonstrate engagement and attentiveness. Then come client's qualities. Now, what does that mean? So in definition, it's more about the characteristics of the client that influence the counseling process. Now, what are the types of client? One is Yavis. Yavis is young, attractive, verbal, intelligent, successful. Second one is Hound. Hound is homely, old, unintelligent, non-verbal, disadvantaged. Dude, D-U-D, is dumb, unintelligent, and disadvantaged. Now, what is the importance of knowing the client qualities? It will allow counselors to consider non-verbal communication, cultural background, and personal attributes. For example, a counselor adapts their approach to a non-verbal client from a different cultural background by being specially attuned to the body language and cultural cues. Now comes the counselor qualities. The definition of counselor qualities would be the personal and professional characteristics that counselor must possess. Now, what are the key characteristics? One is self awareness. Understanding of own values, feelings, and biases are very important for a counselor to understand. Second, honesty by being truthful and transparent to the client. Third, congruence, being genuine and authentic in the interaction. Fourth, ability to communicate, clear and effective communication skills while in the counseling process. Fifth one is acknowledge expertise in counseling method and theories. Then comes initial client preferences. So client often prefer counselors which are perceived as an expert, attractive, and trustworthy. So when I'm saying attractive, it means more of similar, like they have maybe similar thought process, right? So an example could be a counselor builds trust with clients by being consistent, showing genuine concern, and demonstrating expertise in the field through clear and simple communication. Alright, so this is the end of our Block 1 Unit 2. Thank you so much for listening and for your patience.